Good morning, folks. This is going to be a really short video because, well, I'm basically trying not to die from my allergies, and we're doing this between sneezing fits. So, like I said last week, I got a Helix, and I've been playing around with it. And one of the things that I discovered is apparently the hot topic this week. I discovered it from a video that was probably 3 or 4 years old, and have been messing around with it, and just noticed literally yesterday that suddenly there's a whole bunch of videos about doing it, and I don't know what the spark was. I don't know if it was the launch of the smaller units where people were contrasting them and going, well, you can't do this, and I really love this, so let me talk about this. I don't know. And the particular thing that I'm talking about is doing two paths, not for effects necessarily, but two paths where you've got your incoming signal with, if you want a distortion, noise gate, compressor, whatever. Think of it as the line between your guitar and the amp originally, or your guitar and a splitter, which is exactly what you're doing. You take a splitter and you split that path before the amp. So then you've got two routes, one for one amp, one for another amp, and usually cabs. Usually what you do when you're doing this is there's two amp paths, two cab paths, and then it either comes back together or both go out. The way I do it is two separate paths split off after any boosts or distortions or anything like that I'm going to use, and not always. Sometimes they go in one path if I want to only affect one of the amps. The two amps with any other effects I want to use on individual amps. And then after their cabs, after each of the cabs, it merges back together, and then I've got my post effects. These are things that would normally, if you were in a studio, be done in the studio as opposed to in the room. So, reverb, delay, very often a chorus. These are things that usually are done afterward. And in this case, I've got a 5-block area that I can assign those effects to. And they affect both cabinets because they're after everything else. They affect the sound from both cabinets because they're actually not affecting the cabinets, they're after them. But what it gives you is the control of, I want the best features of this amp, and I want the best features of that amp, and the same thing with the cabs. And what I like is when you're doing these kind of things at home with just one guitar, you're not over tracking, you're not doing a loop where you've got 3 other tracks going on and filling in that sound. There's always holes. There's always areas where the signal is thin, because that's just the nature of the beast. Different amps are different. So what I do is I've got 2 tracks, and I'll do similar but complementary amps. For example, I've got the high watt and a Soldano in one of my rigs, and both of them run through. If I remember correctly, I dual cabineted them both, and they've got their, I don't even know what to call it, their default 4x12. They've also got a 1x12, kind of a basic cabinet. So there's 2 cabs on each one. The one block, 2 cabs, because remember the Helix will do stereo cabs. And each cab on each block is mic'd differently. So for example, there's a ribbon on one, and there's a dynamic mic on one for each amp. and it really fills out that sound. It really, you don't have these weird gaps, you don't have any weird humps. You can EQ it to exactly what you want without getting just weirdness. It really sounds a lot more rich, a lot more vibrant. Um, I really like the fact that if you use that kind of setup with a chorus, it really seems to get that multi-guitar sound. It sounds like, I'm not doing a whole lot of lead kind of stuff yet, I'm not that good, but if I'm playing a rhythm section, it sounds like there's two of me. It sounds like there's two people playing slightly different instruments. We're mostly on track with each other, but you know, everybody's a little different. There's a thousandth of a second delay, there's just something a little off. And it makes it a much nicer sound. And I've been doing some A-Bing. I recorded a loop and I was messing with it just mostly to break this in, since it's still only got about 30 hours on it. And you can definitely tell. There is no question it sounds better. So give it a try. There's a million ways you can do it. Go to other YouTube channels and look up how people are doing it. I'm not going to get into the details of how you move the blocks around. Most of you probably have more experience with Helix than I do. Try it out. Pick your favorite two complementary amps and try it. If you're doing direct out to a cabinet, you'll have to decide how you want to mic that up, how you want to change that around. In my case, I'm going direct out to this or to the studio monitors, and depending on how I'm doing that, I have to change my setup. If I'm going direct out to this, which is actually through the micro dark, I tend to keep it a little more clean on the speakers. I don't choose anything that is not in the ballpark of this, and I sometimes turn them off. To be honest, I sometimes straight up turn them off and do no cab emulation at all. On the other hand, when I use the studio monitors, oh yeah, I mean there's no question, when you set up cab emulation and you mic them up differently, you hear every bit of it. But anyway, that is it. I actually ran longer than I expected to. So have fun, keep playing, stay out of trouble.